day of sweet redemption. I will never let you down. Will it ever get sunny? Oh, I wonder, honey, baby, how you make me sway. You say you will. I'm calling your addictive brand. You say you will, yeah. I'm crossing the obsessive line. You say you will. I'm calling your addictive brand. You say you will, yeah. I'm crossing the obsessive line. Saw you rolling steady, took it kinda heavy. Baby, I'm a loving kind. Jaded loving hazard doesn't really matter. Baby, say you will be mine. Take my affection and my safe protection. I will always be around. Will it ever get sunny? Oh, I wonder, honey. I'm trying to be.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 9 of Trucksafe Live, the monthly show where we and our guest tackle the hot button issues impacting highway transportation. I'm Brandon, this is Jerad.
Hey everybody.
We are with Trucksafe Consulting and Childress Law, both of which are dedicated to helping motor carriers develop and maintain cutting-edge safety programs. So we've had a couple of good weeks here. We had a show just recently, 2 shows this month.
Absolutely, yeah.
Keeping busy here. If you didn't catch our last show, it was earlier this month. We talked, what did we talk about?
That was the insurance show.
The insurance show.
Yeah,
it was
a
very
pretty good one.
Yeah, it was a very riveting show. Again, we're trying to hit all of these issues that are causing motor carriers a lot of problems, and insurance is very high on that list, as you can imagine. So we had Nicole on from USI, and we had Hayden on from Idelic, and they gave some great insight on where we're at with the modern insurance market, commercial auto liability insurance for motor carriers, and what's kind of contributing to the skyrocketing premiums that a lot of our motor carrier clients are experiencing. So if you haven't caught that, go catch it on YouTube or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, you can check it out there. So thanks for joining us today. If you're here with us live, make sure you say hi in the comments so we know that you're here. And as we're going to go through the show today, feel free to drop your comments or your thoughts, and we will try to get to them as we're able.
Yeah, in addition to that last show that we did on insurance, that we focused a lot on that ATRI study about rising insurance costs and how that's impacting the trucking industry. We've had a number of other shows. Kind of at this point, we have kind of too many shows to list all in one sentence, but we did shows on nuclear verdicts, independent contractor related issues, telematics. That show was titled Drinking Through a Fire Hose. And as Brandon mentioned, we do have all of our previous shows on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts. So check those out. You can also find them on YouTube as well.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, we're just trying to hit on all of the hot button issues that impact fleets. We do a lot of work with fleets of all different sizes all across the country, and we know that there are no shortage of issues that impact you on a daily basis. So we're trying to bring on the experts to talk about those issues and really dig into them and figure out solutions to them. Kind of along those lines, we've got something exciting going on over at Trucksafe. We just today opened up registration for our first annual Fleet Compliance Summit. So we wanted to do a little promo for that. So here we go. Hey everyone, I'm Brandon Wiseman, president of Trucksafe Consulting. Wanted to let you know about something super exciting we've got in store for later this year, which is our first annual Trucksafe Fleet Compliance Summit. Now, this is going to be a multi-day virtual conference unlike any other, where we'll be joined by some of the most prominent thought leaders in our industry to discuss and develop strategies for addressing the most pressing issues that fleets face today, including things like nuclear verdicts, independent contractor reclassification, DOT enforcement, cargo damage and freight claims, and so much more. We're going to be offering fleets practical tips for mitigating the risk in several key areas, which is great for fleet owners, executive teams, safety directors and managers, and risk advisors alike. I want to personally invite you to join us for this one-of-a-kind event, which will take place on August 11th and 12th. As I said at the start, this will be a virtual conference unlike any other, and I really meant that. Aside from the fantastic educational sessions we have planned, we're also going to feature a virtual event lobby and expo hall where attendees can network and connect with one another, and also visit dozens of vendor booths to check out the latest and greatest products and services offered by our great sponsors. You'll also have an opportunity to speak with vendor representatives, download helpful content, and see product demos. You definitely don't want to miss this opportunity. Registration is now open and seats will fill up fast, so be sure to check out the details and register online at trucksafesummit.com. We look forward to seeing you there. All right, so be sure to check that out. Like I said, registration's open now. You can check it out at trucksafesummit.com. Jerad, I think we've got like 18 speakers booked for that, and we've got dozens of sponsors, so it should be a pretty great event. A lot of great topics, so looking forward to that.
Yeah, yet again, bringing on the experts to talk about the issues, so really exciting.
Yeah, we get sick of hearing our own voices talk, so we bring on other people to talk with us. Okay, so that brings us to today's topic. The show is called Show Me the Money. So we wanted to talk today about another big issue that impacts fleets, and that is kind of this ongoing theme that we've talked about in a few different shows, which is kind of a combination of issues that all kind of roll up into one. You know, we're talking about driver shortage. We've had shows we've talked about driver retention. And so in this show, we want to talk about driver pay, which is one of those other issues that ranks on the list of the top issues impacting motor carriers and drivers, that ATRI list that we've talked so much about over the last few shows. So we know it's kind of, you know, this issue of driver pay is a pain point for carriers and drivers alike. It's an ever-evolving issue, something that we can never really seem to get our hands on or to get a grasp on. And then, you know, we see carriers developing new ways constantly to try and compensate drivers, particularly creating creative new ways to pay them and to come up with new programs to entice them to bring them on board. So that's one of the issues that we wanted to cover in this show. And then also kind of a related issue is this new, fairly newly announced apprenticeship program that the FMCSA, in partnership with the Department of Labor, is going to be rolling out. It's a pilot program to start. We've talked about it in prior shows, but we want to kind of hit on that and how that all plays into this and what it'll mean for the industry. So that's what we're going to talk about in today's show.
Yeah, the apprenticeship program, I mean, it's just one way that Congress and the FMCSA are starting to step in and try to address the driver shortage issue. And of course, you know, we've talked about it in the past, and we have an article on our website as well that kind of gives a deeper dive into the apprenticeship program. But essentially, the goal is to allow those drivers that are under 21 to operate in interstate commerce in certain circumstances. And we know now certain drivers that are under 21 can operate in intrastate commerce only at this point. But the apprenticeship program is going to have kind of a two-part apprenticeship portion to it that's going to total about 400 hours of kind of supervised learning and apprenticeship for those drivers. And then eventually, when they graduate from that program, they'll be able to drive in interstate commerce by themselves. So it's really exciting, and it's going to allow some of these younger drivers to drive and hopefully alleviate some of the driver shortage that a lot of people believe is reality at this point.
Yeah, definitely. So definitely a hot topic in the industry. Let's try and get to the bottom of it with our guests. So we want to welcome them on. First up, we have Leah Shaver, President and CEO of the National Transportation Institute. Hi, Leah.
Hey, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. And then we have Lindsey Trent, co-founder and president of the Next Generation in Trucking Association. Hi, Lindsey.
Hi.
Hey, we appreciate you both joining us. We're excited to talk with you both about these issues. We know you all are very entrenched in these particular issues, so wanted to get your take on them. But before we do, we wanted to spend some time getting to know you. So maybe if you spend a few minutes or so telling us about yourself and your companies and how you got into transportation. So Leah, do you want to start us off?
Sure. First, how I got into trucking, I started as a recruiter. This is my 21st year working in the industry. I loved my job as a recruiter. In fact, I felt like it was my life's work assignment to offer jobs to drivers that would succeed and stay at the company, which means unlike the high volume needs that a recruiter needs to fulfill, I didn't focus on numbers, but rather on the best match for the company, folks that I thought would be retained. And in fact, when I left them 14 years later, there were many that were still at the company. So the picker is good, but I transitioned in year two at my company for to HR overall and risk management, retention. Later managed driver marketing and recruiting teams as well, but never really gave up on that recruiting fever. Just really tried to focus on the lifespan of a driver and recruiting in order to retain from hire to retire. I left the motor carrier side to run NTI, and for the last 7 years, instead of supporting one company, I serve fleets all over the US and Canada. We focus not only on paying appropriately for the job, but also, as I said, effectively retaining from hire to retire. So in terms of our company, NTI provides folks that employ drivers and technicians data and support so that they can effectively recruit and retain from hire to retire. It starts with that information on appropriate compensation, and it leads to communication for ongoing engagement. We see in the trucking industry a lot of forward-facing engagement on the front side, but it needs to continue through the lifespan of the career for the driver. For 27 years this year, NTI has focused on professional driver wages, best practices, and programs. And we analyze nearly every aspect that relates to professional drivers from before they started in the industry to training to perks and programs to owner operators and everything, of course, that impacts the trucking industry and market. Most importantly, what's going to influence driver supply and capacity and demand. So to do that, we track pay in over 600 different markets in North America. We do that by trailer type and job description so that no matter where a company is located or they're expanding their operations, we can hone in on appropriate compensation for drivers or techs, no matter the experience, the requirements, the equipment, the qualifications, teaming, etc. So really quick nutshell of all of the work that we do at NTI.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Lindsey?
Hey, so I've been in the trucking industry for 10 years, and I started off doing driver staffing. I didn't really know anything about the trucking industry, and I applied for this job, and I got it, and I actually just fell in love with the industry, the people, the mission of what we do as an industry. And throughout my career doing driver staffing, obviously, the needs were just immense. People needed drivers to hire. They needed to fill in for vacations. I mean, you have to have your products delivered. This is an essential job. And everybody from the receptionist when you'd walk into a company to the president of the company would say, oh, we're in dire need of drivers. We could hire 10 today. And it was the aging workforce population and just not enough people getting into the industry. And we were very successful at driver staffing. And I did that for 6 years. And then I started work for Ryder, and I worked for Ryder for the last 4 years. And it was the same thing. There's not enough drivers. We can't buy equipment because we need more drivers. It also morphed into, hey, we've got to hire diesel technicians, and we could hire more diesel technicians if there were any out there. So we saw this problem, and I talked with people at lots of different conferences and brainstorming. Somebody at some point mentioned Dave Dine to me, and I said, oh, his program sounds really neat. So he teaches a high school program for CDL driving at Patterson High School in Patterson, California. And so I called Dave one day and we started talking, and we kind of dreamed up this idea. What if we created an industry-wide solution for this industry-wide problem, created a trade association where we're focusing on getting young people aware of trucking careers, but also creating programs so that they can get trained to become CDL drivers and diesel technicians. And that is when we formed the Next Generation of Trucking Association. We've been working on the last few years, creating our board of directors, our bylaws, and working on our mission, which is meeting with schools and informing them about the trucking industry, about CDL programs and how they can start a CDL program at their high school. And so that's where we are. And today I'm full time with the Next Generation and Trucking Association. And we are just working hard every day, meeting with schools across the country. And a lot of schools are very interested. They want to provide good jobs for their students and the communities that they serve. And so we're meeting with schools and helping them start CDL programs and diesel tech programs. It's really exciting, and really, it's a great time to be in trucking.
That's awesome. Well, hey, thanks again to you both for joining us today. We really appreciate it, and we definitely have the right folks for the job here, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Next Gen, that's one of those companies that, I just heard about, and I was like, that's that's awesome.
Yeah.
I hear about this all the time in rubbing shoulders with folks in the transportation industry. I hear about, new things that people are doing, and Next Gen is no exception to that. So it's really cool. You seem very passionate about it. Are you excited every day when you go to work? Except for Mondays?
I am very excited. I love it. Every day. It's so fun what we're doing. I mean, it's really fun, because the thing is, and I say this is, this is good for our economy because we're providing jobs for people and we're keeping freight moving across the country. It's obviously good for our industry because we need a skilled workforce. But the biggest win in what we're doing is the student, because a lot of these students, they're not succeeding in traditional education. And if we can introduce them to a career in trucking, then we can literally change their lives and the upward trajectory of skills that they have and what they can do for their future. And it just changes their entire family tree. And so it's so fun every day because we're impacting students' lives.
Yeah, that's awesome, and we're glad to be a part of it now. So happy to be a member of the association. So want to kind of get into the topic here. You heard us kind of do our intro and talking about the issues, and unsurprisingly, driver pay and turnover continue to top the list of top industry issues. Leah, we've heard you talk about the issue at length on other podcasts and various industry publications. Can you give us a general sense of why this continues to be an issue year after year?
Well, I know you want to talk about pay and turnover, and I feel like those are two categories that get unpacked individually. They do morph into each other inherently, but both have their own individual issues within the industry. First, I'll say at NTI, though we focus on compensation studies, pay is not everything, right? I call it the handshake agreement that leads one to accept a job. We all take a job based on the fact that we know it's going to meet our minimum life criteria. Most of us, is it live to work or work to live? We have to work to live, right?
Yeah.
And some of us that are extremely passionate do end up living to work, but ultimately for most of the workforce, they accept a job based on the components that are being offered. And sometimes pay doesn't align with the job. So let's say we have a work agreement and you accept a position with a particular salary based on a certain job description, and you show up and you start the job and there's a change in conditions, and it leads you to question your decision about this particular company or that particular income. So whether it's unsafe conditions, if it's a lot of labor, if it's teaming and living and managing a lot of personal and work elements all in a very small space, whatever that is, sometimes the pay just doesn't align with the job in the industry. In terms of the highest turnover related to comp, let's say specifically in new driver wages, that's improving. And it's in areas also that are really out of a driver's control. So unpaid, uncompensated time. And so when you think about that, you're looking at detention, or which is historically there's a gap period where there's unpaid detention time. And the pay that does get shared with the driver for detention is typically a very small percentage of the total. And so the total amount of time versus the time on the road or productive behind the wheel is marginally different. The unscheduled layovers due to traffic, weather, maintenance, no load, et cetera. Essentially, anything that's not turning miles is something that costs a driver in their paycheck. And so while we've seen some improvements, as I said, like with new drivers or in consistency with pay, in setting up dedicated runs or offering guarantees, it's just not consistent across the board. And overall, where do folks really want to see the end result? Whether you're a driver or a carrier or a fleet that employs your driver, you want them productive. You want them turning those miles. And so ultimately, the best reward, no matter you mentioned new ideas and new ways to pay people. Ultimately, the very best reward is when the driver is highly productive, and typically that's with miles, or at least the wheel is turning.
Yeah, for sure. And before we even get into the weeds of new ways that carriers are looking to compensate drivers, can you give us a sense of, historically or traditionally, what have been the most common ways that carriers have compensated drivers, just to kind of set our base here?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously mileage is the historic way to pay a driver. That's in the forefront still. That's the most predominant way that we see drivers paid. We also track pay that in terms of like the major silos would be mileage, percentage, by the load, by the hour, and then growing with popularity would be a hybrid pay or a blend of hourly and activity pay.
Yeah. So in researching this show and listening to a couple of your podcasts that you've done previously, Leah, I learned a whole lot about the different ways that, private carriers in particular are starting to pay drivers. And they're almost the test lab, if you will, for these hybrid arrangements of pay. Can you talk about why that is and what we're seeing kind of developing and evolving in that area?
Yeah, so for clarification for folks that are kind enough to join us today, we've got for-hire fleets and we've got private fleets. For-hire fleets being our traditional trucking companies, and then we've got private fleets that are maybe manufacturing companies, retail organizations. They manufacturing companies. They thrive in other industries, and they happen to also own some trucks or lease some trucks anyway, and employ truck drivers to do the work. Private fleets have, we've also been studying for 27 years, and historically they've paid more to a professional driver. They increase pay more consistently year after year, like most of us in other industries, or job types and functions. Private fleets, because they're serving their own internal needs, the driver is going from plant to DC or DC to DC, and then maybe a for-hire fleet takes it from DC to store. So the private fleet driver just has historically had what we've promoted as being transparency in their pay and their schedule. When a driver leaves with a private fleet, they know when they're going to be home, not the number of days. They know the day, the time, they know the schedule. It's all very predictable, and that aligns then with their paycheck and their salary. So private fleets have also been very thorough in pay. I know we're going to talk about FLSA later, but ultimately a private fleet typically doesn't carve out overtime or extra work. In fact, they have some of the most thorough and complicated pay packages in the industry. They pay a driver for every activity. And so private fleets have really kind of led the way with activity pay packages where a driver is incented to run more miles, and they're paid by the mile when they are highly productive. And then when they are stopped at the DC, if they are in the sleeper berth, if they are loading, if they're moving freight, et cetera. I mean, whatever the activity is, it then reverts to either an hourly pay package or to a flat figure for that particular pay attribute. They vary across the board.
Lindsey, with this being such a big issue for drivers, is it something that when we start to think about bringing up new drivers and getting them involved in the industry, is this issue of pay? I imagine it's got to come up at some point in how we teach drivers about the industry and having frank discussions with them about pay.
Yeah, well, pay, they say that Gen Z is not as concerned about pay. They might be concerned about a few other things. But interestingly, we were just at the Mid-America Truck Show. We had 240 students come to the show to do a scavenger hunt. One school system that had 35 students, we got them a classroom and they talked to some industry partners about careers. And the big thing that they wanted to know is, how much will I make? So, pay is important to young people. They want to know how much they're going to make. But Gen Z, some other things that are important to them are technology. And we have a lot of technology in our trucks to offer. So that's a good thing. They want to make a difference in their career and know that what they're doing makes a difference. And trucking is essential. It keeps our shelves stocked. They want to know what they're doing is helping the country in terms of the environment. And we often know that air that goes inside the trucks comes out cleaner than it went in. So there's a lot of things that are important to Gen Z, and money is one of those things. They do want to make a good living and to be able to enjoy life with that income.
Yeah.
I think they also want to know their career path, though, too. And so that's something that we've been promoting for a long time at NTI, and something that I bring up in every conversation possible. Gen Z especially, but not restricted to that generation. They want to know the money. It's not necessarily number one value, yes, but they do want to know, what does the career path look like and what will I make at each level? And so to that, companies have to better articulate not only the compensation plan, like you get paid this particular, nominal fee for this particular attribute, but rather, what does the overall, total benefit package look like? What's the end result to you today in this stage of your career, and tomorrow and the next day and the next?
Yeah.
We have to continue to map that out for folks.
I've always felt like the carriers that do this best are the ones that put an experienced driver in front of the new drivers that they're bringing in, so that the experienced driver can give them like a behind the scenes type look at, here's how it actually works. So we've got a number of clients that do something like that. Put an experienced driver who's been there for 10, 15 years in the orientation program and kind of walk them through these issues of pay. Here's how the pay works. Here's how the benefits work, that type of thing.
Yeah, and I was curious, Lindsey, do you get questions from these students that are related to how am I being paid, or how much am I going to make? So do they get into the details of, am I being paid by the mile or anything like that? Do they know to ask those questions, or are they just concerned with the overall bottom line dollar?
Right. So more so the bottom line dollar until they get educated and seeing all of the different things out there.
Yeah, that makes sense. Did you want to tackle that question?
Yeah, Clive was asking, how about some who get a CDL after 2/7, so after February 7th? So he's talking about the entry-level driver training rule that just went into effect. Kind of goes into what we're talking about, which is, we think about drivers as being a pretty heavily regulated group, and now we're just adding more conditions onto them, including, if they're going to be a CDL driver, they got to go out and get specific training now, and that's adding to the cost of doing business, essentially. So I guess that kind of filters into the whole conversation.
Yeah. Would you think that his question was kind of driving at, in addition to this apprenticeship program, are these drivers going to have to complete the ELDT as well?
Yeah, probably so. I mean, the answer is yes. So if we have drivers that are going to participate in the apprenticeship program, they're certainly going to have to complete the new entry level driver training requirement in order to get their CDL to be able.
We would say that's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
Back to the turnover issue. All of the pay complications that exist out there, they're even further complicated for new entrants, whether they're 18, 19, or 39 years old. Inconsistent and incomplete training across the board has plagued our industry for decades. And so while, Lindsey and I kind of talk often about why didn't they put this in the ELDT? I thought they were going to, and it really would have improved things. But ultimately, having some standardization to the training only helps the rest of the industry kind of know what to expect, but it also helps the new entrants that are joining. We also know that in terms of impacting turnover with new entrants, we see huge turnover that kind of, I don't know which direction the camera's going to pick me up on, but, from 0 to 120 days, you see a spike, that kind of filters slowly down, and it somewhat improves after 120 days. But ultimately, historically new entrant roles are team requirements, so they're over the road, they're irregular route and schedule. Remember all that transparency that we're talking about being appealing. That typically hasn't existed for new entrants. They've had unpredictable home time. The jobs ultimately that are the hardest to fill, that's where new entrants tend to get put. Now, in the last year and a half, with such a terrible shortage in terms of labor, we see a lot of folks, even private fleets, starting training programs, and they are offering local jobs. They're hiring, Gen Z. They are hiring, folks that are experienced in training to run a training program within their company.
Yeah.
That's unheard of. I mean, we
It
used
is.
to look at their requirements as being the most elite of drivers, but they realize that they have to start building a new generation from within. So
Yeah.
whether that's warehouse to driver, dock to driver, school to driver, or school to warehouse to driver, they are creating and articulating that career path in order to encourage new drivers in the industry.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I know just in our conversations with our clients, we're hearing a lot of clients larger motor carriers who have traditionally had minimum qualification standards that say we only hire drivers that have 2 years worth of commercial driving experience, now getting to a point where they're saying, well, we're kind of desperate for drivers. So, can we deviate from those standards? And the lawyer in us we're always a little hesitant to do that. But at some point, you've got no option, really.
Come on, man.
You've gotten to that point.
Why do I serve on the board with the Next Generation and Trucking Association? My greatest passion is that we, for all of us that have thrived in trucking, that we can approach that across the board and promote why trucking should be a first choice career. It cannot be a first choice career when a minimum standard requirement is above 21 years old or at least 2 years of experience. We cannot, it just won't happen. We're not going to change. So get the lawyer in you to start promoting trucking in your community, in your high school, at your technical schools, within families. I'm sure you've heard I'm pregnant. My kid has no choice but to be a trucker. That's the family dynamic here, right? We've got all the stuff ready, all the books we registered for about promoting trucking, and he's gonna know what's up in the Shaver family. But ultimately, every trucking family, we got to get back to that. When I recruited drivers 21 years ago, they were a third generation driver, second generation driver. Today, when I talk to drivers on the air, I work for Sirius XM on the Road Dog Trucking radio channel. They don't want to promote trucking to their kids because it's been so hard. And that's changing. We're evolving as an industry. And we got to get lawyers and insurance companies and carriers and fleets and vendors like us all on board to be a whole lot better at promoting why we love trucking, right?
Well, it's not sustainable, right? Because with an aging workforce, and if everybody had a requirement that you got to have at least 2 years experience, then you have nowhere else to pick from at that point.
Yeah, I have a slide in my deck that's really popular, and it's got the lead funnel, right?
Yeah.
So if you picture that lead funnel, the top and the widest part of the funnel is those inexperienced drivers, and they outnumber applicants and interests 3 to 1. The problem is, as you said, a lack of opportunities for them. And it's growing, it's getting better, but it's still very competitive because we need trainers to train the new entrants. But as that lead funnel narrows, a 2-year driver is getting to a pretty narrow point. And so, if you've got a high number of companies that have that as a minimum requirement, think of all of the folks that are waiting to poach your driver at year 2. So here I'm focused on hiring and recruiting, to retain from hire to retire. How can you do that when there's this large pool waiting to take you away, at that 2 years? So there's just so much that's not sustainable about the current model, but that is one big factor in our opinion.
Yeah, I think we may have lost Lindsey for a second, but hopefully she'll get back on here. But one of the things, so we know you talk with a lot of drivers on your XM show and through NTI, and one of the things I know you've heard a lot about is the volatility and unpredictability of driver pay from week to week. How big of a factor is that, and what can be done about it?
It makes them weep. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I'm teasing. But it's really big, and it's a trigger for turnover. I don't know if we got into that, but ultimately, the biggest complaints that I hear, and that shapes what we research. We make sure that the attributes that we're tracking are the ones that are really driver sensitive. Why? Because if you're looking at data in order to recruit and retain, you want to watch the factors that drivers really care about. And pay is important, and equipment is important, and safety is crucial. But shortening detention wait times, communicating, paying for the work that's done. I get a lot of emails after the show asking about overtime and why and how do we get away with not paying that. Anything that relates to unpaid, unproductive time is a pain point for drivers. And while our workforce historically has kind of taken that as acceptable, we've got an aging workforce in our baby boomers, and the generations that come after them have very different expectations about pay, about the value of their time, about again, their career, and how we perceive the value of their time is certainly something that they take into account when they're choosing a company, but more importantly, when they stay at the company.
Yeah, thanks for that. Leah, I had a quick question for you, and I'd love to get Lindsey's take on this as well.
Let's see if Lindsey's back.
Lindsey, are you back?
There she's back. We've only got half of her face though. There we go.
All right.
All right.
So I wanted to get both of your takes on this. And so I've talked to a handful of people that in the industry that, I respect, that have the point of view that it's not necessarily that we really have a true driver shortage. It's a churn. It's a driver retention problem. And I'm not saying that's valid, but what would you say to that sentiment? How would you respond to that there's not really a driver shortage? It's just a driver retention issue.
You want to pounce first, or do you want me to?
Sure. Well, I hear that over and over again, and I'm really still forming my opinions on that. One of the things that I think, and Leah touched upon, is that we need people young and early on in our industry that are going to be good fits for our industry. And that's why we try to identify good fits by using the job behaviors assessment that assesses whether or not the person has the safe behaviors to make a good truck driver. We can teach the skills through the training, but the assessment that we use to identify young students to invite them to take the training course, it really does assess if they have those behavioral traits, which in turn makes them more retained in the industry. So we're trying to get those young people that we feel like can be retained, but then also show them the career path. They can own their own trucks and they want to be their own boss. And so how can we show them the path of starting here and then you're going to end up there?
You'd be a good politician, Lindsey. Leah, is there a driver shortage or no?
I wondered if this would come up and what your position would be. Ultimately, what I would share with you is that we have less than a handful of fleets that tell us we are having an easy time hiring. And even when they claim that they've had an easier time, when we unpack it, they've got 30 trucks that they need to fill, and ultimately there's this dire need of A, B, C, and D. So take that for what you will. That said, every door that all four of us have entered in any commercial business in the last year has been desperate for workers. Every trucking company trailer that we pass on the road or are behind, whatever, says we're hiring drivers and blasts even their pay, their offerings, etc. Private fleets are advertising. Private fleets actually have had to get a whole lot better at recruiting in the last few years than they ever have before. And ultimately, when it comes down to it, we cannot replace the exits that are occurring. And so, do we have a driver shortage? Absolutely. We've talked about the age issue in trucking for years at NTI. It's been a dominant slide in my deck for the 7 years that I've run the company. And it's always something that has to be part of our review when we meet with a carrier. But, baby boomers were a very large percentage of our workforce before the pandemic. The pandemic has complicated that. There are what we call fixed driver supply constraints, and there are ones that were exacerbated by the pandemic. And overall, some of those exacerbated by the pandemic are now a fixed driver supply constraint. So do we have a driver shortage? Absolutely. And ultimately, it's not as simple as numbers to seat a truck. It's just not. And there's a lot of economists that we know, we're friends with, we listen to and see their charts on social media, et cetera. You can argue that we have enough people to do the job, but now the conversation shifts to what role they're in, what their expectations are, what the type of work it is, and now the churn conversation, the age issue, the health issue. Health issue is major. The training, the lack of first choice career options. The more that those folks age out, wear out of the job, we are losing, what was 26% of our workforce. And so that's a serious problem that is not going anywhere.
Well, and the other thing I think that's interesting that goes into that same debate is if you look at the numbers from the Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse of the number of drivers that are currently disqualified from operating a commercial motor vehicle because of a drug and alcohol violation, it's about 80,000, which just so happens to be the same number that the ATA estimates that we're short on drivers. So, that's another factor that plays into it.
And the tiny percentage of those drivers with those violations that have actually initiated the SIP process. It's a very, very small number. So, it looks like those folks are leaving the industry, unfortunately.
A point that doesn't come up enough augmenting that last one is then the companies that could potentially take them back or take them, after going through a SAP program, it is truly not that many. So, you talk about about experience as a requirement. I frankly, I don't mean to be crass, but I don't even understand why we talk about the failure to rejoin the industry when there's so few companies that even could or would take a driver that had failed a pre-employment or a drug and alcohol.
I totally agree with that. And we've had discussions about that in the past on shows where, we've encouraged management that's open to having that conversation, to actually have that conversation in advance. So that way they have some kind of way to uniformly approach those drivers when they get in front of them. Because if you are desperate for drivers and a driver has completed the regulatory requirements to rejoin the workforce, you're just going to stonewall all of them, no questions asked, or are you developing a process on how to do that? Of course, the lawyer brain of both of ours is kind of going off right now. You qualify a driver that's gone through the SAP process and has had issues with alcohol or substances in the past. You kind of have to have a written process to do that. So
Yeah, and certainly we see the same thing. Carriers have those policies that say we're not going to hire any driver that's had a drug and alcohol violation in the past. Some of that I suspect is driven by insurance, which is a whole nother conversation, and we kind of had that before our show today. But yeah, it's definitely something carriers need to take a closer look at rather than just automatically throwing that in their policy and leaving it there.
There's a lot of complications that come after even looking at the policy. Carriers tell me even if they have adjusted the policy and they will take that driver back or take someone who has failed, the process of requalifying and what's required in that first year to get to like show up for random testing and et cetera, it's very location exclusive and complicated for the nature of the job. There's just a lot of other factors. And then when it comes to the carriers themselves, if the driver failed the test, they typically see that driver exit altogether. Even if they would work with her and requalify her and put her back in the truck, it's ghosted. The opportunity is gone. So it's really, it's an issue that's going to evolve, but it's frankly, there's just too few companies that even could or would work with that type of violation.
So what else do you all see carriers doing to try and kind of ease this pain for their drivers and attract new ones? We hear talk about, sign-on bonuses and safety bonuses and that type of thing. Can you give us a sense of what kind of creative things fleets are trying to do to get more drivers to come through the door?
Yeah. I mean, we track over 100 different attributes of pay, not only in over 600 locations and by trailer type and job description, but then it goes into that complicated pay package, right? So, sign-on bonuses and safety bonuses are just the beginning. If you go beyond those as being, frankly, kind of an expectation today, of course, there's guaranteed pay and, salary pay, hybrid activity pay packages. Look at things like easy to understand benefits, legal plans, so the driver has support if there is an issue ahead of time rather than dealing with it after. But more trendy in the last year has been more generous passenger and pet policies. Those are really at the forefront. Frankly, when I worked at a carrier, pet policies were just horrifying. The damage to equipment. I look back and when I see how much they're thriving now, I just wonder about, the equipment. But that said, it's not only a comfort and having your pal in the truck kind of thing. It's also a security issue for women. We find that women really love having their pet with them as a security blanket as well. So pet policies have really been thriving, and so have flexing on passenger policies, whether we still see companies implementing them for the first time, which shocks me, but also adjusting the age to allow for even younger or multiple passengers in the truck. Pet insurance, like health insurance for your dog. That's a big deal.
I have that, but only because we
trendy.
have a bulldog that has eaten a ton of baby pacifiers and has had surgery like 3 times to extract the baby pacifier.
You start to have bills and you think I might need a policy for that, right? So I can't believe it, but pet insurance is new. College tuition has been new in a variety of different ways. Any kind of support for secondary education, not only for the driver, but also for, sometimes even 2 dependents. Transition bonuses rather than sign-on bonuses. These are just a few, but ultimately kind of how can we look at a driver? If we say trucking is a lifestyle, then I think companies are looking at what really impacts a driver holistically, not just in the truck or in the standard of the work paycheck and the health insurance package. So if that's family leave, medical leave, prenatal care, maternity leave and maternity job, accommodations for a woman so that she's not completely exiting the industry. Obviously I could go on, but you get it. We're evolving to kind of put a little spice into what we're offering.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I think for the next generation, it's about companies need to be engaged in their local school system. They need to do the touch a truck events. one thing we're putting together is this PowerPoint career presentation all about careers in the trucking industry. And we hope to be able to unveil that in the fall. It's going to be awesome, interactive. It's going to engage young people so they'll think, wow, I think I might want to become a truck driver, or I might want to become a diesel technician. And we are going to put that pet in there in photos, because they do want to bring their pets with them. So it's engaging the next generation. It's having your drivers maybe post on TikTok or post on Instagram about their job, a day in the life. So we have to get these young people engaged, and they're on social media. So how can you create a program so you're reaching the next generation with your company and your brand through social media?
Yeah, and
It's so amazing how much we need to promote more in our community. And I totally, as you know, making trucking a first choice career, it starts in the family and with our own people in our community, et cetera. So that should be listed as a benefit, Lindsey. I love that point.
Yeah, I wanted to ask Lindsey, actually, could you kind of walk me through any given week of outreach activities that NextGen kind of engages in? And then also for anyone that wants to tap into what NextGen is doing and help or actually plug NextGen into their community, how can they get involved with that?
Yeah, so we are meeting with schools daily. For instance, I had a meeting with a school from Texas earlier today about starting a CDL program, and it's brainstorming what works in that community. It's meeting with community colleges and the high school. And so we do that daily, talk to schools, talk to them about trucking programs and what they can do. And then also talk to them about, you know, how we can promote trucking as a career by using this presentation that we're going to have. Most of the time it's in 8th grade when they take career classes and learn about different careers out there. And so we encourage the industry to get partnered with their local school and go teach about the trucking industry, and maybe bring some trucks with you, because that's going to get young people excited. And we've got to get more young people excited about it. So we are trying to raise awareness that way, trying to raise awareness through social media. We are also trying to get young people to come to our website and explain about careers in trucking and what they can expect to make, what they can't expect to do. So anything in terms of reaching the next generation for trucking careers. We know not everybody's going to go to college. And today, each student that graduates from college has $30,000 to $50,000 of student loan debt. And Gen Z is questioning whether or not that is the pathway they want to take. We're going to see that more and more every day. And so we have to provide them other outlets besides the college route. Now, maybe they want to eventually go to college, but why can't they go to college while becoming a truck driver and while driving and paying their way through college? So we need to start thinking outside the box and engaging young people, engaging educators, and really starting to work within our communities where we hire people.
So that's probably a good segue into kind of the apprenticeship program, the other topic we wanted to kind of hit on. And I know we've kind of already hit on it a little bit, but can you both give us a sense of what is the apprenticeship program? I know we've only got a little bit of time left, and I know we could spend an hour talking about the apprenticeship program, but just give us a sense of what it's going to be at the start and how you all, especially NextGen, envision kind of participating in that.
Yeah, so think of the Safe Driver Apprenticeship Pilot Program as twofold. One is through the FMCSA and the other is through the Department of Labor. So you need to have a Department of Labor apprenticeship program to get into the FMCSA pilot program. Now you can use a company like the Next Generation and Trucking Association. You can use the American Trucking Association. TCA just came out with an apprenticeship program, or you can have your own apprenticeship program. And so we're all just trying to work through the Department of Labor to have more apprenticeships to happen. And they are a good thing. They help with retention. It is identifying and highlighting and celebrating people who go through apprenticeships and reaching steps. And it's a crazy statistic that I think 89% of people that have gone through an apprenticeship program after 9 months are still with that same company. So you should consider an apprenticeship program. It's competency based. And if you use an intermediary like we do, like Fastport, or if you go through us, it's a simple process. So they take the hard work out of it. The other part is through the FMCSA. And so the FMCSA has 2 probationary periods for that 18 to 20-year-old driver. And the first one is 120 hours, and they have to be driving for 80 hours of that, and the rest they'll have to be on duty. And then they have competencies within that they have to master. And then the second probationary period is the same. It's 280 hours that time. And they have other competencies within that they have to master, all while mastering the Department of Labor apprenticeship competencies. So they go hand in hand, and they work together. And it's supposed to open up in May through the FMCSA. So if you want to apply for it, be on the lookout for May. And I'm sure lots of people will be posting that it's open if that's something that you're looking to do.
And it's a pilot program right at the start, so it's going to be limited participation.
3,000 spots, and it's 3 years. And really the point is to try to get some data to see, are these young people safe, and can we trust them to drive over state lines?
And Leah, it has NTI. Are you all going to do any kind of data gathering with the apprenticeship program? Do you have any plans in store for kind of studying that?
We'll ask the fleets that participate if they are participating and how many they have. One of the questions that I had asked Lindsey a couple of weeks ago was, 3,000 spots in this environment, you'd think that would go really quickly.
Yeah.
How are we going to track that or know exactly, like does number 3 fleet in the nation get 60 spots because they're huge, or do they get one spot? Do you know, Linz, did you ever find out if it's allocated in any way?
I don't. That is a good question.
We'll just have to monitor the volume, when we survey.
The FMCSA's notice gives a little bit of info on that. I think it says that it's 3,000 spots, and they're anticipating approving approximately 1,000 carriers to fill those 3,000 spots. So, but they recognize in the notice that number is going to go up and down as some of the apprentices leave the program. And then we obviously got to backfill that. So it'll be interesting to see.
Mm-hmm. Sure will.
All right. Well, we're kind of running out of time here. Again, we really appreciate you both joining us. Wanted to both give you a chance to kind of wrap things up here and let us know what you got going on, how folks can find you, where they can find out more information. So, Leah, you want to start?
Sure. It's our website is driverwages.com. Social is at NTI Driver Wages. I'm on LinkedIn at Leah B. Shaver. And social for Sirius with my driver audience is at Leah Shaver Sirius XM. You can catch me on Sirius on the first Thursday of every month for payday until I go on maternity leave for a brief moment. But I'm pretty engaged, and I would hope, if we're not connected, that you take this as an opportunity to get connected.
Excellent. Lindsey?
Yeah, and you can reach us on our website, nextgentrucking.org. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn or on all of the social media pages, and we are at Next Gen Truckers. So come and find us. Send me an email. I'd love to connect with you. My email is lindsey@nextgentrucking.org. And we are just really excited about what we're doing. And there's a good chance that we've met with a school in your area, and we'd love to get you connected. So message me, and let's start really reaching the next generation and letting them know about these great jobs that we have to offer.
And I have to add a plug for that. I've had Lindsey on SiriusXM with me several times, and the driver interest in mentoring, in engaging with the next generation, in advocating for trucking on their company's behalf is very high. So just like we talk about being in the school and promoting to your employees' families in the community what mom and dad do at the trucking company, whether they're a truck driver or working in dispatch or HR or recruiting, whatever it is, we want to be promoting that. Your drivers do want to be your best ambassadors, not just to recruit more drivers, but also to coach and lead and encourage the next generation. So joining Next Gen is a really good retention opportunity as well to solicit mentorship within your own organization, which hopefully you have some sort of program already, but tagging that program for the next generation in your communities is also a great opportunity to retain your drivers long term.
Definitely. Hey, well, thanks again so much to both of you. Thanks for everything that you're doing for the industry. We really appreciate your insight on these topics. Always great to hear from you. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so wrapping things up here. Thanks everybody for joining us. In Next Gen, we're really excited to partner with them. As I said at the start, Trucksafe partnering with them. One of the things that we're offering to Next Gen members is a compliance package for carriers that are interested in participating in the apprenticeship program. We've developed a bunch of policy-related documents, reporting documents that you'll need in order to participate in that program. So check that out. If you're a member of Next Gen, you get access to that compliance package. And then the other thing, we're excited to be raising some funds for Next Gen trucking through our Fleet Compliance Summit that we mentioned at the start. We will be doing a fundraiser for them, so be sure to check that out as well. Lastly, wanted to mention one other thing that we've got coming up here next month. In fact, April 14th, we're going to put on a free webinar where Jerad and I are going to be talking about the mechanics of a DOT audit, how DOT audits work, what fleets need to know to prepare for one, or just have your things in order in case you ever get that knock at the door. So visit our website, trucksafeconsulting.com, if you have any interest in attending that. It's going to be April 14th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. You can get the details on our website. You can register there.
Why did you make me a giant in that photo there?
Sorry, that's just how it turned out.
No, we got a lot of things going on. Excited about that webinar. It's going to be a great one, talking about audits and how to survive an audit and the things that you need to know, do's and don'ts about an audit. Very exciting. And then the Fleet Compliance Summit, like Brandon said, August 11th and 12th. We're very excited about that. If you're interested in any of our courses, we also offer courses on driver trainings, safety manager trainings, reasonable suspicion supervisor trainings, getting ready to roll out a new hazmat training. So check out our website. We got a lot of trainings there, and let us know if you have any questions for us. If you have topic ideas that you want to pitch to us, we'd love to see those. So you can send us an email or drop a message to us.
Yeah, topic
Greatly
or guest
appreciate that.
ideas. If you know anybody that you want to see us talk with, feel free to send us their names, and we'll get them on. So other than that, thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks.